I would like to see an ad where you did the complete opposite, where you're like, "Hey, watch this movie because I'm in it," and then someone be like, "Wow, the audacity on that girl," and then they'd be like, "But I'm still gonna watch it because I'm a hardcore fan, but I just can't believe she said it that way," and then
I
I'd
don't
be
think
like,
I could ever do that. It
"I
would make
I,
me
I think
feel so
yeah."
uncomfortable.
Brittany, my very first question is: we're like a few days away from Christmas.
Hmm.
How excited are you?
I'm so excited for Christmas. I love Christmas. Every year I look forward to it. I start getting excited in November. This year I bought wrapping paper in August. So
That,
very
that
excited.
that's fair. I was about to say I thought you'd be like more excited in like October because in this household, that's when like the Hallmark movies come on, and I'm just like
Oh, yeah.
I get criticized for like as soon as Halloween's over, getting in the
Hmm.
Christmas mood, while there are people in this house that will watch the Hallmark movies way before Halloween, but like no one bats an
Oh, yeah.
eye. No one bats an
No.
eye at them. It's almost like,
Oh, no.
listen, it's on TV. There's nothing else on. I'm like, fair play. Um,
Yeah.
I do want to make a bit of a funny comment, and I'm sure you've heard this one before, but like to me, with the holiday movies for Hallmark, it's almost like, all right, we've taken Brittany, we teamed her up with Matt. Let's do another movie with Brittany and
Yeah.
this guy, and it's like, but it's the same idea. And then I get it; it's a different concept in terms of maybe
Hmm.
it's a different place, it's a different circumstance.
Yeah.
But I guess a guy would kind of look at that and be like, yeah, it's the same thing. Local guy comes home or local girl comes home,
Yeah.
lost their job, finds their love of their life. But like, how do you reply, if ever, if people had come up to you and said that?
Well, yeah, I mean, some people do say that. I think ultimately, while the structure is the same and the format is very similar in terms of, how they actually write the scripts are written in 9 acts.
Yeah.
And there's a very distinct through line that people like to see. All of the stories are different and they do have different characters. You know, the holiday movies tend to have a little bit more of a through line that is familiar just because it's around the holidays. But
Yeah.
when you look at the stories, even though they are somewhat similar in how they're developed, um, in terms of, guy meets girl or girl meets guy, and then there's the issues and the natural uh, transition of friends to people who love each other. The stories do all have different spirits and they do all have different aspects. And I think one thing that's really fun when working on these is that you have the opportunity to watch different people bring different characters to life, and no two people are going to play those the same. So, as long as the stories you're telling are unique and real, then it doesn't really matter as long as they make people happy.
Yeah, I just bring it up because there's a guy that's like so on home or on Instagram that will like I
Hmm.
think he starts trending, and I think he's got a niche where it's almost like he pretends to be a Hallmark writer, and then it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
he pretends like someone else is coming in the room. It's like, all right, it's like they're on a farm. It's like, oh, he falls in love with a girl on the farm, and it's like it's called
Yeah.
A Ride to Remember or something, and like brilliant. And I'm like, it feels like that's how it goes down, but I'm sure it doesn't. But it's like
No, it's
almost
far
yeah.
more nuanced than that. But
Yeah.
but no, it is there. I think the reason why they've been so successful is because they are formulaic, and people know
Yeah.
what to expect when they're going to those movies, and as a result, they know they're going to walk out happy. And they're not everybody's cup of tea, but a lot of people do love them, which is great.
Yeah.
There's a huge audience for them, and at the end of the day, like especially around the holidays, we all need something that makes us happy, and I think they fill that for a lot of people.
Yeah, I know that there's people, I'm sure, regardless where they're from, that will like PVR it because I know right around
Hmm.
December time, like for myself and probably my generation, like I know that there's girls that are my age that will watch it. But for me, I will turn on like Home Alone 2, and I probably
Yeah.
have like am on DVD as well, but it's just like
Hmm.
it's on TV, I'll watch it. But
Yeah.
it comes around December that I feel like Hallmark, it's almost like it's the countdown to Christmas, and then when December comes, it's like, okay, you've seen all our movies, you've seen all the new ones. It's like, so go rewatch them. It's like, okay, but like there's
Hmm.
still like 20 odd days here. Come on.
They actually
Yeah,
do with the countdown to Christmas, as far as I know.
yeah,
Perhaps last year was different because of COVID. But as far as I know, with the countdown to Christmas, they try to air new movies all the way up until the new year.
Yeah,
There was one year that I had a film premiere um, earlier in December. I think it was around December 14th or something. And the last movie, the last original movie that they aired was actually after the new year. And it
yeah,
was a New Year's movie. So I know that, you know, even though they do repeat, there's also a lot of people who, based on their families or whatever, don't have a chance to watch them when they first air, which is why they repeat them. And then there's, of course, you know, the favorites over the years
yeah.
that people want to rewatch. But they do, as far as I know, and as far as it was the year that I had my film premiere for them for Christmas, was that they had original films every few days. So even though they weren't every single night, they did have new ones because I think they make somewhere in the vein of like 40 Christmas movies a year.
Oh wow. Okay.
So
I
no
know.
shortage of new
Yeah,
ones.
yeah. I like though
Yeah.
that the other aspect that I think people kind of forget with Hallmark sometimes, which I do like that Hallmark does, is because
Hmm.
I used to always be like, why are they still showing Christmas movies in like January to almost like February? But then
Yeah.
there's always people that are like overseas. There are people that
Hmm.
are like, that couldn't make it home for Christmas and they celebrate
Yeah.
Christmas late for that purpose. I was like, okay, so they're
Yeah.
kind of catering to them, which is an audience that it's like I don't know how big the audience is, but it's still an audience there that someone's like, man, like my husband or wife is overseas, they're not coming home till like January 15th. Like, why do you shut down the movies then? And they
Yeah.
don't. They keep them going until, and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, that's great for them. It's
Of
a niche
course.
audience, but awesome. I want to ask you because I'm going to ask you like how you got into obviously the Hallmark movie roles as well,
Hmm.
but I had it written down here because I've seen it a few times. My niece seen it a few times, and
Oh.
at first we were kind of like, "Is this the same girl?" But Blizzard, I think it's is
Yeah.
it yeah. And I was looking at it the other day, and I'm like, man,
Oh,
how many
wow.
people go back and you look at like their first role in anything,
Yeah.
um, or just their first Christmas movie, whatever, and then they
Hmm.
look back and like, do they look back at it with fond memories, or they look
Oh,
back at it and be
yeah.
like, hey, I was like, can you not show me that anymore? How's your take on Blizzard?
You know what? I think it's such a sweet movie. It's one of those ones, like, obviously for me, I get so uncomfortable anytime I'm watching myself in anything. I
That's
think
fair.
that is just a pretty natural way. Like anytime my face pops up, I'm like, oh my God, get me out of here.
Yeah,
Why am I looking at myself? Um, but at the end of the day, Blizzard was such a fun movie to be a part of, and it's such a great Christmas movie in my opinion. Like it's got such a great message. It's it's sort of one of those films that it just it there's something in it for everyone, I
yeah.
think.
Has a
And
pretty good cast too.
it's become a Christmas classic, dare I
Yeah,
say. It's been
yeah,
on every year. I mean, I made that movie when I was 11.
yeah.
So 20 years it's been on air. It plays every Christmas. I get messages from people every Christmas asking me if I'm the meanie in that movie, and it's it's sort of become this timeless film that people just love to watch, and I'm really proud that I'm a part of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I look back because like when you're a child watching certain movies and then you go back and watch it when you're grown up, sometimes you forget like who voiced what part or you're
Hmm.
kind of excited because I know with Annabelle's Wish, I was very
Yeah.
surprised because that's like a really old one. I remember bringing it to school when I was younger.
Yeah.
Completely devastated when my dad was like, "Hey, we rented that. You have to bring that back at some point." And I was like, "Man, don't
Do
tell
I
me
have
that."
to?
And then like years later, finding out, the name's kind of blanking on me now, but I think it was like uh oh, come to me at one pipe, but he narrates the whole thing, and he's like a
Hmm.
famous country singer. I should probably know this better, but I was just very surprised that like you go and look at the voice actors for it. I believe even uh one of the girls that was in the Golden Girls voiced
Hmm.
the aunt, and I was
Oh, wow.
like 8-year-old Brian, 5 or 8-year-old Brian was like, I don't care. I like the animation. But as you get older, you're like, all right, like cool. Did
Yeah.
not know that. It's like
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
realize when you get older, Toy Story was like
Oh,
Tom
yeah.
Tom Hanks voiced it, and
Iconic
you're
people.
like, can you stop making great movies, Tom Hanks? Like we get it. Stop. But I want to ask you, like, how did you get into acting, and then how did this kind of open the door for pretty much? It seems like exclusively a lot of these Hallmark. It's just like get Brittany. She knows what she's doing. So how did that all come to be?
Well, acting wise, I was really young. I was about 6 years old, and there was an open casting call for a commercial. I was a little girl in ballet class, and someone came in and mentioned that they were doing a commercial and they needed a bunch of little ballerinas, and I begged my parents to let me go. And I managed to get the commercial. And then I sat my parents down and told them I wanted to be an actress. And they, I think at the time, were excited for me, but also like, oh God, no. We don't, there's no, why would you choose this for a living? Um, but they saw my determination, so they were really supportive. And I'm very lucky that they were supportive because I know a lot of people don't have, especially in the arts, people don't have parents that are super on board with them doing those things. And then I took a break in the middle for a bit through high school. And then when I started up again, I was about 19. And I've just been acting ever since. And yes, I do a lot of rom coms,
Yeah.
a lot of the romance genre movies. I did my first one ever for Hallmark. I can't even remember what year it was, but it was called Love Blossoms. That was the first film I ever did for them. And started working with them and other companies that do similar style films after that. But I've done some other stuff in the middle too. I have a really cool film that just premiered actually in California at the Newport Beach Film Festival called Shadowtown, which is a psychological thriller that I'm really proud of. And I did a period piece earlier last year called The Marijuana Conspiracy, which was a true story, which was really cool to be a part of as well. So while I do a lot of the rom com stuff and I really enjoy it,
Yeah.
the uh, the goal for me is just to be able to do what I love every day, or as many days out of a year as an actor can possibly do that. And I'm happy to work on any and all projects. And I'm very grateful that people have continued to support me in the romance genre because I think
Yeah.
it's a really special one to be a part of. And I think when you're given an opportunity and the audiences support you so much, it's just like it's exciting knowing that you're making something that people are going to love. And it's always a little scary when you're making something that's really different and you have no idea if people are going to love it or hate it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of one of those things where it's nice to be a part of because I know people are going to like the movies.
I
So
like
it's
it.
kind of nice.
I think the idea that I like too is when you start to kind of not try to pinpoint in one genre, but like when you start getting known in a particular genre, and then they
Mm-hmm.
start doing the ads. Like I'm sure when they first started doing say Christmas movies with you in it, it was like
Mm-hmm.
okay, who's the main star that people will know, or like who's the one that we advertise. But I feel like now when you go watch like the holiday movies that Hallmark puts on,
Mm-hmm.
or when they do the previews, they're almost like your name is like a marquee, or like whoever else is like, for example, like I think
Yeah.
it's Danica is a marquee as well, or
Mm-hmm.
Danica. But it's like
Yeah, yeah.
as soon as they start premiering them, it's like you. As soon as they mention that name, there are people that are probably like, "Oh yeah, I remember her," and like this one from this year. Like
Yeah.
so I'm gonna watch it regardless. And then it's like, "Oh,
Yeah, well, and
that's
that's part of
nice."
it. That's
Yeah,
part of it too, is I think like a lot of the people who watch these movies are really a loyal fan base. And if they like you in something, they're gonna support you. I mean, even at the Newport Beach Film Festival, one thing that was fascinating, I wasn't able to be there. I was in St. John's working. But what was hilarious was some of the women that went to go see this film that I did. That's this dark psychological drama that's shot in Iceland,
yeah,
and I play somebody completely different than the romance films. There were women in the audience who knew me from having watched me in the romance
mm,
movies, and they bought tickets and went to this film festival just to support me in that.
yeah,
So what's really incredible is that the fan base of these films is so loyal that if they love you in one thing, they will support each and everything that you do. And that's really special too, because not only are you building a career, but you're building a group of people that support you and want to cheer you on. And I don't know that that exists quite the same way in other genres.
yeah.
So it's cool. Yeah, it's neat.
Yeah, I was gonna say like because I know like I'm a big fan of when I was younger. I don't know how recent it would be today, but it's like
Mhm.
Adam Sandler,
Mhm.
Jim Carrey, Will Ferrell, and like when you're younger, you find that kind of humor interesting or like kind of funny,
Oh yeah.
When I go back and watch some of the movies, I'm like, all right, that's not exactly a hit, but at the same time, I'm like, I came for you, so
Yeah.
it's like I don't think I've ever gone to see Jack and Jill by Adam Sandler. It's not on my list. Sorry, Adam, it's just not. But there are other movies that I will distinctively defend from Sandler,
Yeah.
and then there's other ones that I'm just like, you're right, it's not great, but I went
Yeah.
because the name on the marquee. So
Yeah,
it's that
exactly.
fan base, right? It's like
Yeah.
if someone was like to me tomorrow, it's like, oh, I'm going to see an Adam Sandler. I hate that guy or something. I'd be like, that's totally okay with you, but like I'm going not knowing what this movie is, but just
Yeah.
because he's in it. Like
Just
there are
because
like
he's in it, I want to
yeah,
see it.
yeah, like
Yeah.
there are Disney movies that he has done that I'm sure like you don't have that Adam Sandler style humor, and I'm kind of
Hmm.
like I will watch it because he's in it. Like I think pandemic wise when I was looking for like movies to watch because my friends like movies. I'm not a big movie
Hmm.
goer, and I'm like, man, they're referencing things from the '90s that I should know that I don't.
Yeah.
And so I was like,
Yeah.
I'll just go binge watch some movies. And I think the movie's called like Rain on Me or Rain Over Me. It's kind of
Hmm.
based on like the 9/11 story, um,
Okay.
with Adam Sandler in it, and that was like not Adam Sandler humor. And I was just like,
Right.
oh, I was like, that's actually a pretty good acting job. That's not funny.
Hmm.
It's serious. I'm like, how come people are not giving him more credit? And say, oh, because the movie was released, Brian, like 10 years ago. I was like, oh,
Oh,
that's
right.
helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
no,
like
but it is
that
true. You make a good point. I think sometimes um, people will see somebody as succeeding in one space, and
yeah.
somebody like an Adam Sandler is a really good example of that, and then sort of write them off when it comes to other things. So it can be challenging too, in
Yeah.
that, if you have something that you love that you want to get, like there's been things that I've auditioned for and I've been like, oh, I would love to do something like this. And in the back of my mind, every once in a while, I'm like, I just don't know if they'll buy me for it.
Yeah.
Like if they'll look at me and go, yeah, she could do it, or if they're going to look at me and go, but she's the romance girl,
Yeah. Exactly.
which I still love those movies and I will do them every day for the rest of my life, not,
Yeah.
shaking a finger at them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do think sometimes it's interesting. So then when you have the audience members that are willing to go, I don't know anything about this movie. I don't think it's funny, but I like this person and I believe in this person. So I'm going to go and I'm going
Yeah.
to watch it anyways. That's how you're able to sort of branch out. And somebody like a Zach Galifianakis did it beautifully. I mean,
Yeah.
he's an incredible serious actor, and people didn't think he was after The Hangover. And then you watch some of the newer films he's got. Same with Melissa McCarthy, people that were like true comedians,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh wow,
I
okay,
wonder. I
oh,
wonder
they're
in like
actually really
yeah.
fantastic
I
in
wonder if it's
other things.
harder. I wonder if it's harder to go from like say comedy to serious or serious to comedy because I feel like it's harder to go from like comedy to serious because people expect laughs. Where if you go serious and
Fair.
then you go funny, it's almost like
People are impressed.
yeah, like people are kind of like I did not know that that guy was funny. Like a big one for me, and I'm sure there's a lot of male audiences that will probably agree, or maybe they won't. But it's like John Cena or Dwayne the Rock Johnson. Like you're like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, these guys are big, tough, funny guy, or like big. Yeah, they're supposed to be like
Yeah.
serious, and then they go and do like a funny movie, and you're like,
Yeah.
I did not know that that was, and I'm just like, well, it was such easy. It was so easy because like you were expecting like as soon as they name a joke or a scene and you laugh, you're like,
Yeah.
he played that well. Where it's the other way around, you're almost like,
Yeah.
I didn't come here to see you do seriousness. It's like,
Yeah.
well, that's tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, like going back to that, I think it's funny because when you're talking about getting a core audience, like I know for me with Sandler, there's obviously
Hmm.
movies that were came out way before like I was really interested in it, but Mr.
Hmm.
Deeds was I think the first one that they showed on TBS, which is my all-time favorite movie now. But
Yeah.
there are people out there that will be like, wait a second, like Winona Ryder was in other movies, and I'm like, oh yeah, but this is my favorite Winona Ryder
Right.
movie because everything just links together well. And they're like, yeah,
Yeah.
but that's probably like the worst Winona. I'm like, for you maybe, for me, I enjoy it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
yeah, and I think sometimes like a movie can really, I guess, in a sense, like if people are really on board of it or really like it, they can kind of make your career and go like to a bigger platform. Like I know one that premiered last Christmas. Now it's already been a few times on Hallmark.
Hmm.
I'm probably going to butcher the name, but I'll give you the premise, and then you might remember the name or might have seen it. But
Hmm.
um, it's I think the girl ends up adopting the two kids because the mother dies. The guy was really into like wood building, but his dad never supported him. And I think it's something with a Molly or Holly in it, but I don't remember the whole um, name.
Oh,
But it was like it only came out, I think, the end of last year. But like
right.
it's a really good movie. If I'm going to come in watching someone that's already
Mhm.
watching that movie, because I've seen it
Right.
bits and pieces along the way, but I'm like, it
Yeah.
got a good message. It gets to a real core. Of course, it has its holiday, what I call cheesy moments where it's like, oh,
Mhm.
of course, this all comes together in the end, but it's
Yeah.
still kind of nice and appealing. And I can see
Mhm.
that for the female that's in it. Obviously, I'm not making a good case for this, but the female that's in it, I can see like if 2 or 3 years down the road that you start seeing her name on a marquee for movies, I'm like, yeah, I'm like, that's she did good in this
It
movie.
makes
So yeah,
sense.
of course. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
um,
that's so true.
but
That's
like,
so
have you
true. I
found that?
didn't see that
Yeah.
one, but
Oh,
I did see advertisements for
yeah,
it.
yeah. Definitely turn it on. You'd be like, oh yeah, it's a good movie. Do you have people like I know when you said when you branch out into other roles,
Mhm.
do you have like a fan base then that either comes at you at like Twitter or Instagram and was like, positive and negative? Is it mostly positive, or do you have some people
Um,
like, I didn't expect you to be in this role. I was totally upset with this. Why are you doing
oh,
this?
no. No, it's actually really funny. I have had almost entirely positive support from people, which I feel very lucky for because, um, from the small experience I've had with the negativity on the internet, it is not fun.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I've been quite lucky. I mean, there's a couple of people. The one film I did, the marijuana conspiracy, it was definitely um, not the same audience in the sense of what people who are definitely just wanting to look at,
Yeah.
the romance movies are looking for. That said, a lot of people who watch the Hallmark movies that support me mentioned to me that they saw it and that they thought it was great.
Yeah.
So it's not that they're different audiences entirely, it's just a different, style of film. That said, there was one person who was like, "The movie is great, however, there's gonna be some Hallmarkies that don't love it, so,
Yeah.
like, just be aware, know what it's about." Um, so in that sense, like, I think that's other than one person saying, like, some people might not be their cup of tea just based on the types of movies that they would have seen you in previously, but
Yeah.
it was great, is that, like, I've been very, very lucky with almost entirely positive feedback on things like that. And I think um, I've maintained since the beginning of my career really taking off, if that's even the right way to look at it, that I am where I am because of the people that have supported me, both on Hallmark, on romance films, and what else I've done over the last few years. And you know, I I want them to be happy, but I think also because of that, the people that follow me and the people that interact with me feel a certain. I would hope at least that they would feel a certain amount of appreciation from me to them. So when it comes to watching my movies, I'm not saying like, oh, watch this because I'm in it. You're going to love it. I'm saying if you watch this, I would be so grateful. I worked hard on it and I'm proud of it. And so there's a different, at least I hope, because it's what I would like to portray
Yeah.
and put forward, is that like I'm just so appreciative of anyone who wants to support me in whatever it is I'm doing. And if I'm taking chances, it really makes me excited when people are proud of me in a sense for being brave, trying something new or trying something um, outside of myself. So in that sense, like yeah, I hope that that's where they see it. And so, but I do think as a result of my appreciation for the people who support me, they've in turn been very supportive
Yeah.
because they know how much I appreciate their support.
I would like to see an ad where you did the complete opposite, where you're like, "Hey, watch this movie because I'm in it," and then someone be like, "Wow, the audacity on that girl," and then they'd be like, "But I'm still gonna watch it because I'm a hardcore fan, but I just can't believe she said it that way," and then
I
I'd
don't
be
think
like,
I could ever do that. It
"I
would make
I,
me
I think
feel so
yeah, I
uncomfortable.
think I could, knowing that there would be people on the internet that would tear me a new one. But at the same point, I'm
Fair.
like, I feel like you're 1990, I'm 91, so we kind of grew
Mhm.
up on like the MSN kind of
Oh
like
yeah.
era, or era, and then it's almost,
Mhm.
well, you can say era too, but
Yeah.
it's like I'm used to probably people just being a bit hateful online, but the only difference is I know it's online. This person lives Ohio, wherever, and it's like you're
Mhm.
probably never going to see me. This is your 2 cents to get off your chest, whatever. So if I did an
Yeah.
ad tomorrow of like, hey, you better watch Tobin tonight, not Conan, not this, and someone's like, can you believe this guy? This Newfoundlander thinks he's got, and I'm just like, cool, it got your attention, and if that's what you want to say, cool. Like you're never going to see me, but great. Right, compared to me
Yeah, I
coming,
think
yeah,
I find it can be hard. I don't know. I do agree to a certain extent, but I'm also somebody that I genuinely care how people uh interact with me, especially online, because
yeah,
you know, while my Instagram isn't necessarily my 100% life, it's not, every moment of my day. It's not me,
it's not.
waking
Well,
up
you're
with
not
my
using it
crazy hair
correctly.
and
No.
right. But it is one of those things where I want it to represent me well, but I also want who I am to shine through on that. And I think sometimes it can be challenging when, there have been moments, one in particular I can think of, but I won't describe the exact
Yeah, yeah,
moment, but
yeah.
um, where, when you get hateful messages and you get hateful comments, or you get messages or comments that are kind of mean or belittling or dismissive, it can be really hurtful, especially when you're somebody that genuinely cares about, I care about the people that I'm interacting with online. And I know that I don't always get to talk to everybody, and I don't get to message everybody back, and I don't get to do that all the time, but it genuinely matters to me, and I don't want ever for people to think that I'm like this. I don't know. I have like a
Like an ego.
fundamental,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but also in the same way, like I would just never want to be the person that would say anything that would like affect someone negatively, and so for me, I try to make sure that like my interactions don't allow for that
It's
either,
yeah, it's a
like on
tight
both sides
it's
of it.
it's a tight balancing act. I feel like,
Mhm.
the social media world has made it a little bit tougher for that. Like,
Yeah.
I was looking at one, I think it's a few weeks ago, but it was uh and it's sports. I feel like sports is it's its own engagement, but it's like
Mhm. Absolutely.
someone had tweeted out because there was Cole Caulfield playing for Montreal, but he was
Mhm.
sent down to Laval at this point, and he didn't score. And then the opposing team's Twitter tweeted out, "Is Cole Caulfield even in the building?" And he's a 20-year-old, but like he's going to eventually score. But like then Habs fans got mad, and then they were like,
Yeah.
"Was it in the wrong for the PR team of this team to do that?" I'm like, it's there's 50-50. There's people like, leave him alone, he's a
Yeah.
kid, but I'm like, that's kind of the fun part of sports too, where it's almost like you're
Yeah.
tripping him, and then he'll end up scoring on you, and as long as you're a good sport about it,
Yeah.
whatever. But I feel like it's gotten to the point where you can't even tweet out, say, if Sidney Crosby gets hurt and it's the Philadelphia Flyers and they're like, yeah, Crosby's hurt, awesome. It's like, as long as he's like not totally hurt,
Yeah.
people are like, how dare you? It's like, they're
I
rivals.
know.
What do you expect to be like?
It's true. I mean,
Yeah,
I think there is a very fine line.
yeah.
So I do agree with you. I do think there's a fine line though, in that like I think things like Twitter especially have sort of made it so people forget that the people that they're commenting about are actual people.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that's part of the problem, is that like these people are getting attacked or are getting like berated when they're a 20-year-old kid who's trying their best to score a goal.
Yeah, yeah.
And people forget that they're a 20-year-old kid doing their best trying to score a goal, and just start like
Yeah.
unleashing on them. And I think that, sometimes we need to put ourselves in check and be like, right, this is a real person who's just trying their best. And
Yeah.
like, even if their best is not my best, or in this case, their best is a heck of a lot better than like 90% of the population of the world.
Yeah.
I think it's just important that people remember that.
Yeah.
in the
Oh,
grand scheme just to do
I
things.
can come at that from like two different spectrums because I know when I was maybe like the World Juniors obviously is a big deal for
Mhm,
Canada or anything really winter related with
mhm,
sports. But I remember years ago, I think Canada was up like 5-0
mhm.
or and then Russia comes back and wins. And I'm only like 19 going to Memorial University at this point, but I remember being in a
Yeah,
car and like listening on Newfoundland radio of people belittling like Ryan Ellis, everyone on that
yeah,
team. And I'm 19 years old and I'm also like livid because I'm like, wow,
yeah,
that's embarrassing. But then,
yeah,
like now when I'm like 29 years old, looking back at that, I'm like, man, imagine being the 19-year-old that's listening to this on your own local station of people
yeah,
that supported you. And all of a sudden
yeah.
now they're saying you're a piece of crap, you're
Well,
trash.
and exactly, and you take something
Yeah.
like that, which like, listen, there's always going to be people that are going to try to knock you down. There's always going to be people who are going to be willing to hide behind whatever and just
Yeah.
say whatever they want. That's always going to exist. But then like take those comments and then throw Twitter in the mix.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine just like, sure, it sucks to have to listen to that radio casting, but then like to turn around and be like, oh, there's also 5 million people on Twitter who are just yelling at me. It
Yeah.
would just be so much worse.
It's funny because I think over
It's
the
great, but it's
years,
also evil.
yeah, like it's funny because I think over the years, which I think is kind of like, with all new technology, all like different platforms and stuff, it's kind
Mhm.
of creating awareness in certain aspects too. Cause I think now with the World Juniors, I don't know if it's been the last 2 or 3 years, maybe five, but it's like Hockey Canada almost tells the kids as soon as they come in and make the team, or even in training camp, they're like, listen, turn off your social media because trust
Mhm.
me, you're not going to want to go on it. Rather, like you'll maybe get like 5 great comments if you make the team, but as soon as it's all done and said, if we win
Mhm.
silver, you're gone. Like people are
Well,
coming for you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
So
funny, I actually remember something my parents told me when I was really little. It was after Blizzard.
yeah.
I saw a really mean news article in a newspaper. And I was so distraught. I was like, or was it? No, it wasn't on a newspaper. I think it was maybe on like IMDb. Somebody had reviewed something and said something
Okay.
really mean about me.
Was it like Brittany Bristow is abysmal, and then you did the Joey Tribbiani and was like, man, this is such a great review.
Honestly, I wish that's what they'd said. Also, because I was a child.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
other thing. Is I was like an 11-year-old girl who had just been like taken through the ringer. I was like, this is so mean.
yeah,
And my dad said something. My parents said something to me that has sort of, I think, just always stayed with me as I've gotten older. And it's that if you're gonna read the bad, read the good too. But if you're gonna read the good, you have to read the bad
yeah,
because you can't look at one and not focus on the other. Um, so it's better just to not pay attention at all.
yeah,
And I think as social media has grown and it's become this sort of like beautiful monster, it is this thing where like if you're going to read all the comments, you have to be prepared for the ones where people aren't going to be nice to you or people are going to tell you that they don't like your work and
it's the thing
you
about
have to be willing to see both sides of it and some
yeah, like
people aren't willing to do that and for some people it's really hard and I think that's entirely understandable.
the thing I think with social media, and then after I get through this, you can have a say. We'll go somewhere else, go another topic. But it's like I think it's
Perfect.
funny because with social media, like again with the newspaper articles, with like magazines, someone at least has to have the credibility for that. Like where you reach
Hmm.
out to that magazine or say like who posted this, and they might defend it and say no, listen, that's anonymous. But I feel like with
Yeah.
social media, you see a lot of eggs, or you see a lot of
Yeah.
like blank accounts, or avatars, and you're like, oh, okay, you're
Yeah.
hiding behind that. But I remember there was one on I think it's like Apple podcasting, and
Hmm.
you were just starting off doing this podcast, and like someone was like, man, it's like I feel so bad for the guests that come on the show because they have so much to
Oh.
say, and this guy this guy is terrible, but like he hopefully he gets better. And I was like, well, hopefully he gets better is the part that I'm going to take away from that, and
Yeah,
hope in 3 or 4 years you come back and was like, even if you're like still crap but better guests, I'd be like,
but
well,
better.
you came back, you still came back, so
Yeah, at
good.
least you came
But
back.
yeah,
Yeah.
but like
No,
the
it's so
ones that you
true.
get of good comments are more or less like, and I guess you have to accept it as the host per se,
Hmm.
where like I will go back on YouTube, find comments, and like I was so glad Emma Wiggle said that, or I was so glad that Steve Howie explained this to
Yeah.
me. And I'm like, what about me? Like, I brought it out, but they're like, they just come for the guest. So you kind of got to
Right.
accept, like, I feel like even watching like Conan or Kimmel,
Hmm.
I feel like there are people that like Conan over time, but a
Yeah.
lot of them probably are like, oh, it's a really good interview that he did with so and so. And I'm like, okay, so you came for them, but then you kind of
Yeah.
stayed out. So I'm like, I get it. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
not the main appeal to these episodes, but they'll come and be like,
But
oh,
hey, people are listening to the show for
yeah,
you.
yeah,
They just happen to
yeah.
hear us.
Yeah, in the future though, like
There you go.
as I tell my friends, just so they don't think I have a bloated ego, I'll be like, listen, I hate the host too, but man, he has some good guests. And then they're like, is he serious? Well, I guess we can't take him that serious. I'm like, that's cool, that's fine. Um, I want to ask you, just kind of going into a little bit of, because you mentioned before we went on this whole social media rant, which I'm
Mhm,
okay with, but
mhm.
you mentioned about you were in St. John's.
Yes.
I was actually kind of surprised to find that you have ties to Newfoundland. I believe it was
Yeah.
it's on your mom's side. Is she
Yeah, my
from
mom.
she's a Newfoundlander. I've been told I can't use the term
She is.
Newfie because people get offended, even though
Oh,
I am a Newfie, but um we'll use
there
the
we
term
are.
Newfoundlander. uh so like do you actually did you come back for like a visit, or was there a project entitled or entailed with that as well?
Yeah, I was actually working in St. John's. I was working on an episode of a TV show.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, so I had a smallish part, but it was really fun to be there and it gave me a chance to visit. I hadn't been back since I was about 9, but I got a chance to see my aunt and uncle who live out there, which was really great. And, sort of retrace a lot of the footsteps my mom had taken. I believe she went to Memorial University.
Nice.
Uh, and yeah, so I kind of got to explore this area. And when we went back to Newfoundland when I was little, we didn't spend a ton of time in St. John's because my mom is from an area that's about 3.5 hours away. So
Okay.
we more so just drove straight there and spent some time there. So yeah, it was really nice to be there, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, my mom is from Newfoundland.
Now, see, if I know there's a few like a few shows now that are like
Mhm.
kind of based on Newfoundland, but I mean, you don't have to answer. You can kind of make a joke of it on the side. But like, did this episode that you had a small part in have a dog on the show?
It might have,
It might. Okay, fair enough. That's all. Well, that's all we'll get into. But yeah, because I mean,
maybe.
there's a few. There's like I've noticed because for the longest time, we used to have like Republic of Doyle down here,
Hmm.
and then now they have like Hudson and Rex, and I was like, oh, that's
Hmm.
probably like the only show here. But then there has been an actor that was on Hudson and Rex with a small part that's back in Newfoundland for like another kind of sci-fi TV show as well, and
Yes.
I'm like, wow, like there's a lot
Yeah, I
of
have a couple of friends working on that one as well.
yeah, and I was just
Yeah.
like, okay, interesting. Like, I did not know this, so I feel like there should be a
Yeah.
point where it's like, hey, now there's a podcast show in Newfoundland too. It's like, oh, the media world is booming in Newfoundland, but
Yeah, there's quite
yeah,
a few. I think there's been a Disney film shot out there earlier this year, as far as I know,
that
and
is
then
true
there's
too.
another show that's shooting or just finished shooting out there. It's
Yeah,
quite a bit.
it's surprising to me because I always
Hmm.
thought when you were smaller, it's like Toronto, Vancouver, but it
Hmm.
seems like I can see the appeal for Newfoundland, but I do like which they wouldn't do in the past when you see Newfoundland shows, but it's like it's almost like, hey, we're in Newfoundland, but we don't need to make it like entitled Newfoundland. Like you
Right.
can still have the jelly bean houses, and people are like, "Oh, that looks interesting," but we're not outright saying, "Look at our jelly bean houses. Look how we fit this into the scene. Like, look at the water.
Yeah.
Look how we fit this into the scene." It's like, no, it's just a
It's
platform.
just a part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's so
Um,
true.
I want to ask too, because now we kind of went over a little bit of the career part, social media.
Yeah.
I'd like to get, of course, into the Christmas part as well.
Of
Um,
course.
what are some things obviously around Christmas time, because we're in that festive spirit now, that you like to do, like things that maybe like in past times, like do you go like skating, do you like make snowman, do you like watch movies, watch yourself on the TV
Oh
and be like,
God,
hey,
not
I did
me. As
well in
long as
that?
I'm
No.
not in it.
Yeah,
As long as I'm not in it, we're good.
yeah.
No, I love watching Christmas movies. One of my favorite things to do is I start collecting presents for people like as early as is not insane. So I like to start buying presents for people early. And then, like, one of my very favorite things to do is during the day when my fiance is working, is I will like stay at home and wrap presents and watch Christmas movies or like bake cookies and listen to Christmas music all day because I'm really into Christmas. I like to get a Christmas tree as early as is permitted. Uh, so like November, December, I get my Christmas tree up and I like to decorate it. And my fiance and I have like a couple of different decorations now. We're like starting to collect our own little things.
Okay.
Um, and that's something for me that I think is a tradition in my family that I would like to carry on is every year my mom gives myself and my sister a decoration or two on Christmas Eve. And it was sort of a tradition that she started so that when we grew up, we would have a tree full of
Yeah.
however many years old we were of decorations, which is really sweet. And then she like write the year on it every year. So I have decorations from when I was 1 until turning 30.
Yeah, I wonder
Um,
where I'm kind of interested. I wonder where like all that kind of starts because I know like we see like in the moment, I feel like you
mhm,
probably don't think about it, but then when you like I guess when
yeah,
you become an adult and you have a kid, you're kind of like I kind of
mhm,
want to remember this because I'm probably gonna forget when they got this. Like
yeah,
I've got ones that says like baby's first Christmas,
yeah,
1991. I've got ones where they
yeah,
take in like your picture with Santa and they have it in like its
mhm.
own little thing on a tree, and
Little
then they'll mark
ornament,
on the
yeah,
back, and I'm like, man, I wouldn't have thought of that, but I guess
yeah.
when you have a child and you're like kind
It
of like
becomes a thing that
it
you
it,
think
it
of.
it becomes like one of those, yeah, because I look at it and I'm like,
Yeah.
I kind of wonder if like today's generation does that as much. I don't
Mhm.
know. I feel like they probably do, but I look at some of the
Maybe,
ornaments that
yeah.
we have on our tree and there's like, past pets that have passed away, and you're like, "Oh,
Aw.
I still collect them or I still have them," but it's kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah, you probably wouldn't see that in the store anymore. Like we have one that has Buster and it's a dog bone, but it's like someone had made
Aw,
it, and
that's so
I feel
cute.
I feel like you can probably still go out and get something dog related, but
Oh, yeah,
it's
totally.
not the same.
That.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, those are good to keep. And then I
Yeah.
think I had an ornament last year that was like, oh my, like just 80s, 70s. It was one of my parents. Like they're just
Oh, that's amazing.
ornaments, nothing like special. My
Mhm.
niece and nephew were decorating a small little Christmas tree, and of course, didn't hang them correctly, and then they started to fall. And then
Oh, no.
it's like, yeah, well, they're 70s and 80s ornaments. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, as soon as they hit the
They've
floor,
lasted this
yeah,
long.
yeah, exactly. So it's nice that they're kept, but
Yeah.
there's something to say about the old. The other thing I actually wanted to ask you that I was interested in, just because it's a little bit Christmas related, and I don't know if your family did it because I noticed it less and less as time goes
Mhm.
on, but like tinsel on a tree.
So we, I believe, used to have tinsel.
Yeah.
And then about 20 years ago, my mom bought these, I think it was my mom that bought them, these little like metal hanger thingies. They're
Okay.
like candy canes and that they have like the little hook, but they spin like this down and they're metal and they look like tinsel.
Okay.
And there's like a package of 50 of them. So we hang those all over the tree now. So they're like tinsel icicles.
Okay. Nice. Because yeah, I
So
noticed like
it's not as messy as
yeah.
tinsel because tinsel is a
Oh,
mess.
that's yeah. No, I mean, I remember when you were younger. Like if you go back in like the yearbook and see like I see tinsel, I see cleaning it off the floor, and then recently,
Oh
I think
yeah.
it's only like hit me like a few days ago where I'm like, wait, how come our
Where's
recent
the
trees don't have
tinsel?
tinsel? And I'm like, okay, never noticed that just stopped becoming a trend. But like,
Hmm.
it's funny how they things stop and then they go. Like, there are
Hmm.
ones now where kids have the elf on the shelf. I never grew up with elf on the shelf. Never
I
grew up
didn't
with
even, I don't,
yeah,
yeah, I don't know what that is even really. I mean, I
yeah,
know
yeah,
what it is,
yeah.
but
And I never grew up
I,
with finding I think it's a pickle. Like, of course, if you have like, depending on how many kids you have, it's like
right.
the pickle. And I'm like, all
The
right,
pickle is
where
the
have all
best.
these traditions when we were smaller? I would have liked to find a pickle to get another gift, or like
Right.
I would have liked an elf on the shelf to kind of scare me to death, but also make me
Yeah.
excited for Christmas. But
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, we just had the every night being told that Santa knows what you're doing all the time.
yeah,
That
I
scared me
yeah,
half to death. I was like, okay, I'm only ever going to be the best kid in the world.
yeah. Or it's like
Santa's watching.
or it's like my birthday's in October, so like when October
Okay.
finished,
Happy
and then
birthday.
Oh, thank you. And then when like November came, it's almost like, all right, he's watching you now. Like he's watching you like a
Yeah.
goddamn hawk. And I was just like, but like I just had my birthday. How bad can I be within the next a month and a half? And it's like, oh, you'll
Bad.
see. School will test you. And I was like, all right. Um, but yeah, I always think there's some still mystery sides of Christmas that I kind of been enticed about. Like I know maybe New Year's or not New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve. There used to be
Mhm.
like someone that had like it looks like a sled and Santa
Mhm.
flying in the air. And I remember as a kid going like, "Oh my god, that's him. He is here early." It's like the news said he wasn't going
I
to be here
have to
till
go
like
to bed right
yeah,
now.
they said he wasn't going to be here till like 2 o'clock. Why is he?
Yeah.
And then like your parents be like thanks a lot, Gary, ruining it for everybody. But it's like yeah, it's like he's just checking around to make sure that you guys are still being good before he delivers. Like and I'm like, oh cool, but I don't know how they do that. There's definitely a house out there that has like the trajectory or
Oh
something,
yeah,
but
it's the Batman light.
yeah, but as a kid you're like that's really cool. And then when you see
Yeah.
kids now that see that, you're kind of like, okay, don't ruin it for them, but you're kind of
No,
like, man, I'm still
100%.
enticed of how they do that.
Yeah.
So
Is
I
it
like those
Santa
mysteries.
Claus?
Yeah, like I feel like when you die and then you go to heaven, be like, "Can you please tell me?" And they're like, "We're not even telling you." I'm like, "Oh, come on, that's the one question that I
Come
have."
on.
Yeah, yeah. Now in regards to like other traditions, like I know that's one, of course, that you mentioned, but like, do you find yourself listening to like say Christmas classics like on the radio? Because I know I enjoy the classics. There was a song like I
Mhm.
think it's "Wonderful Christmas Time" by Paul McCartney. When I was
Mhm.
younger, hated it. As I get older, I
Mm.
don't know why, but it's kind of grown on me.
You
But I
love it
kind of
now?
do like that artist now, whether you want to call it like, a cash grab or like, I haven't released something in a while, so here's my like way back in the
Christmas.
door, but Christmas
Yeah.
CDs. But I think there's like a few that have come out. Like Macklemore has like a Christmas song and a New Year's song.
He does?
Yeah, and it's really good. It
Wow.
like it has like flashbacks to like 90s. And then
Amazing.
Rob Thomas has one or a Christmas album that came out recently, which I really enjoy. I feel like these are like free plugs for them,
Amazing.
but if you're a fan, you're a fan.
I love it.
Yeah, yeah.
Also,
So
like, Christmas music just rocks. So,
yeah, I always like finding new songs because again, like no offense to Mariah Carey, but like there's always so much of Mariah I can listen to.
yeah.
Only so much of Hillary Duff, Santa Claus Lane that you can
Oh,
listen to.
totally.
So
I mean, I love all Christmas music. I do love the old classics.
yeah,
Um, but I'll listen to any of it.
yeah. If it helps,
Any
this
and
this
all.
yeah, if it helps, this is how old or like how young it's come to me. Where it's like I think it's like the song is actually oh I can't remember the name, but it's like Nat King Cole, and I only know
Mhm.
that now because in Macklemore's lyric he refers to it, and
Oh,
I was like, man,
well, there
like
you go.
there's gonna be people out there like you should be embarrassed that you did not know that was called, and I'm like, oh, I am, but I
I
like that
am.
song
Don't
too.
worry.
Don't worry, I am. You don't have to add more to me, but it just took me
Oh,
till
that's too
Macklemore
funny.
referenced it to. I'm like, oh yeah, I know that song. I just didn't know it was called that or sung by that. It's like someone's
Yeah.
telling you the difference between Frank Sinatra and like Dean Martin, and you're just like, man, it's just a Christmas song to me. And then like years
Yeah,
later, you're like,
exactly.
that was the song. Oh, did not know.
Yeah.
Um,
There's
but
also one by what is it? The something symphony. Uh, oh, I can't even remember right now, but it's like my favorite one and it's all instrumental.
yeah, okay. Oh yeah, those ones when I listen to like I Heart Christmas come on a lot. Like the
Mm.
the one that I've watched it plenty of times, but just never referenced it to like it's like a Charlie Brown Christmas, and they'll play
Mhm.
that in it, and my nephew loves listening to it to go to bed. But
Mhm.
I just never really linked two of it together, and I've watched the movie the
Fair.
whole time, and I'm just like never really linked it, but sure. Um,
Well,
it-
one of my very favorite Christmas albums is Snook's Christmas CD.
really?
Don't
Okay.
know if you know.
No, I
Don't know
know,
if you
I know,
know.
I know the kind of curly hair, and they used to come on like we have NTV down here, and it's just I
Yeah.
my aunt when I was younger hated it, just did not like the character,
No.
did not like the
Oh,
character. She's like, I hate that guy, I hate the character. I'm like, it's a character, it's not him as a real person.
true.
Relax. Yeah,
True.
yeah,
Um, but when I was recently in Newfoundland, I mentioned this while I was on set, and a couple of people mentioned that they knew Pete quite well,
oh wow.
and uh, they told him that I love his Christmas CD. and he sent me another one
Oh wow.
because he has two, and I'm so excited to play it this Christmas because they make me laugh so hard.
Yeah.
The whole family loves it.
There's
We just have a lot of giggles on Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine because obviously you have like either a favorite album or a favorite music video you go to. Um, I find now as you get older, and I think I don't listen to so much of the music or watch the music videos now, but when I was younger, it was like 98 Degrees. I think it was like
Mm,
This Gift. Much music used to play it all the time, but I liked how they had like
right.
a concert setting. The video for it was like, oh man, it's so magical. But
Yeah.
in my mind is like I guess this kind of brings back like the Hallmark side of things too, where I'm like, man, it's like I am going to meet a girl on Christmas. That's the song that's gonna play, and it's gonna be so
Yeah.
romantic. And then and then your buddy would be like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, totally." Like,
Yeah, I'm
relax.
just dreaming about my dream girl that I meet on Christmas
Yeah,
Day.
yeah, yeah,
Shut up. It's
yeah,
fine.
yeah. Just leave me alone. It's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No,
there's that
100%.
one. There's that one, and then there's like another one they have. I think it was like Let It Snow by Boys to Men because I watched like the
Mm,
TV specials and the Fresh Prince one as I was younger. Didn't really like Fresh Prince as much as I do now, but I just
mhm.
like how they all tie that in where it's like Will
Oh,
Smith's
yeah.
character, like Will is like, yeah, it's like I totally need you guys to show up. It's like, yeah, but like you used to date the girl that I did, you called me shit, and then they just randomly show up for his nephew's christening, and I'm like, when you were younger, you're like, man, like those guys can actually sing, and then you're like, oh wait, that's Boys to Men. You're like,
Yeah.
again,
They're
one of
like,
those moments
"Oh,
like,
another
don't
actors,
yeah,
just"
yeah, yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, don't tell people that you did not know that was Boys to Men. But it's fine. It's all good. Um,
Yeah. No one will
Brittany,
blame you now.
I want to, I guess, to close out the interview, one of the last questions I kind of want to ask, and it might not be so much Christmas related as just more or less
Okay.
future related, but like,
Mm.
what do you see yourself? I was going to say doing in 2022, but it's probably more Christmas or more movies in general. But like, what are some goals that you have for 2022? And I know that's kind of a loaded question because people are like, don't ask me goals.
Yeah.
I just want to succeed.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah,
Well, yes, I do just wanna succeed.
yeah,
That said, I would really like if the opportunity is available and it is safe to do so, I would really like to do some traveling. I would, of course, love to work, but I think that's a no-brainer. I would like to write or at least develop a movie script idea or two that I have. My fiance and I have been working on a couple, and I would like to get those a little bit more developed so that they're in a position where we could potentially look at getting them produced or produce them ourselves. And I'm getting married,
oh,
so
nice.
do that.
Just drop that in there like it's not a big deal.
Yeah,
I'm getting Oh, by the way, I'm getting married. It's like, oh,
yeah.
okay. So the
So
other
like
two
those are
things were
my
really
goals.
big. This thing's small, but don't tell my fiance I said those two were bigger. He would
So
not
those
like that.
things, I'd like to do those things, and I'd like to do them well. You
Yeah.
know.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned it in that order because at first I was going to be like, I'm going to ask Brittany. It's like, hey, can you produce that in Newfoundland? I will be a
Mm.
part of it if allowed. But then if I had to let you keep going and then interrupt, I'd be like, he wants to be a part of my wedding, and I'd be like, no. Well,
Just
maybe,
well,
but no.
maybe, but no.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for this episode of Tobin Tonight. Our thanks to Brittany for coming on to the show. Remember, you can find past, present, and future episodes on TobinTonight.com, Spotify, and iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and leave a comment or two. For Tobin and myself, this is Jacob saying, thank you for listening and good night.